The debate about Muslims in Germany is often very emotional and heated. In this video, we want to take a step back and look at the topic in a more factual way. We will rely only on the scientific findings from the book Muslims in Germany in order to separate facts from fiction. This quote from an NPD politician is a typical example of a narrative that appears again and again. It creates the image that Muslims are foreign, dangerous, and somehow do not belong to Germany. But how much truth is there in such claims? Let us look at what the book actually says and examine these emotionally charged ideas with a sober fact check. How will we do that? We will go through the topic in 5 steps. First, we look at what the debate is based on. Then we go back into history. After that, we explore how diverse Muslims actually are, ask how such enemy images are created, and finally discuss whether religion is really a problem, or perhaps even a resource. Let us begin with the core of the issue. In many right-wing debates, it is often suggested that Muslims have only recently appeared in Germany. What is interesting is the structure of these narratives. Whether it comes from the identitarian movement or other right-wing populist groups, the core messages are usually the same. They warn about mass immigration, claim there is an Islamization, and present Islam as incompatible with German identity. This is exactly where we start our analysis. We want to move the debate away from feelings of threat and bring it back to the level of facts, based on the scientific research presented in this book. Now let us confront these claims with history. The idea that Muslims are somehow new to Germany is simply incorrect. If we look at this timeline, we can clearly see how deeply Muslim life is connected to modern German history. It started with the so-called guest workers after 1955. Already in 1979, the Kuhn Memorandum stated that most of them would stay in Germany. And since the Immigration Act of 2005, Germany officially recognizes itself as a country of immigration. This means Muslim communities have been part of Germany's social development for more than half a century. The key point is this: there is a large gap between the reality people live and what is discussed politically. From a historical perspective, the question, does Islam belong to Germany, is actually misleading. Muslims have long been a normal part of this society. This brings us to the next important point. The idea that Muslims form one single, homogeneous group quickly collapses when we look more closely. So who are Muslims in Germany? Who are the roughly 4 million people who are often treated as if they were all the same? Even within Sunni Islam, the largest group among Muslims in Germany, there are at least 4 different currents. There is an ethical Islam, where religion is mainly a private matter. There are scripturalist interpretations that focus strongly on religious texts, and there is also what researchers call folk Islam. In other words, there is no single theological or lived form of Islam. Another example makes this diversity even clearer. If we look at the scholarship holders of the Muslim Scholarship Foundation Avicenna, more than half of them have Turkish roots. But the rest come from Egypt, Lebanon, Morocco, and many other countries. This shows the enormous ethnic and national diversity within Muslim communities. The conclusion is clear. The closer we look, the less convincing this simple enemy image becomes. The idea of the Muslims is a political simplification that does not reflect reality. But this raises an important question. If reality is so diverse, why does this negative and uniform image persist so strongly? The book shows that anti-Muslim resentment is not random. It is produced socially and politically. A key concept here is called interpolation. It may sound complicated, but the idea is simple. People can become what they are constantly labeled as by others. Imagine someone repeatedly putting the same label on you. At some point, you might start to see yourself through that label. A quote from a study illustrates this very clearly. A young woman who did not grow up particularly religious explains why she decided to wear a headscarf. Her reasoning was simple. If everyone constantly tells me that I am a Muslim woman, then I will embrace that identity. Even her parents were surprised. In this way, outside pressure can actually create the identity that is later criticized. This leads to a central argument of the book. Islamophobia is not simply a reaction to the behavior of Muslims. Instead, it reflects developments within the majority society, within politics and the media. In many ways, it tells us more about our society than about Muslims themselves. Let us now move to the final part. In political debates, religion is often presented as a problem or an obstacle to integration. But what happens if we change our perspective? Here we see two perspectives side by side. On the one hand, there is the political problem narrative that talks about parallel societies and outdated norms. On the other hand, scientific research shows that religiosity can actually be an important resource. It can give people orientation, meaning, community, and stability. This idea is related to the so-called Bakenford dilemma. In simple terms, it means that a free and democratic state depends on values like solidarity and morality, but it cannot enforce them through laws alone. Religious communities can therefore play an important role in strengthening these values. In summary, religion is not automatically an obstacle to integration. On the contrary, especially in migration contexts, it can be a stabilizing factor. It can help people find orientation, build community, and search for meaning. The negative image of religion often comes from political narratives that have little to do with everyday reality. Overall, the analysis of this book shows how right-wing narratives work. They take a very complex reality and reduce it to a simple enemy image. In doing so, they ignore history, diversity, and the everyday lives of millions of people. This leads to a final question that I would like to leave with you. If the facts clearly contradict these narratives, what should we really be discussing? Which debates do we actually need in order to shape living together in Germany in a constructive way? Today's video is based on a work by Peter Antes and Rauf Salin, 2017. If you have questions or topic suggestions, feel free to write to YouTube at EmpowerMigra.com. EmpowerMigra, understanding begins with listening.